a new age company, for example, Boat, we started working with Aman and his team 6-7 years back. He was in a small office in Oscars. So it's been amazing journey to see how they've built Boat to be such a mammoth brand in people's hearts, and I think we've been fortunate. We've had a role to play over there, in that journey.
How big were they when you started in the
I
Hoskas
think
office?
they're like a 10-15 member team, right? Thinking of a 20 lakh marketing budget, you don't think that this brand's going to sell for 2,000 or 3,000 crores. Now they are 3,500, 4,000 crores this year. So
Yeah.
it's like a phenomenal journey. It's a virtuous cycle of the right people driving good business outcomes. The clients also happy to give us more work. That has been a good engine. I think we've been I'd say reasonably successful at it over the last 3 years, but still a long way to go in the next 3 years as we want to be the top three agencies in India. That investor wanted 90% of the company, for a few
Oh,
crores.
wow.
I think that time, obviously, I think entrepreneurs are also successful sometimes because they are sharks.
Welcome to the India Opportunity Podcast. Our guest today is Suneil, co founder of Socialbeat, one of India's largest digital marketing agencies. Socialbeat has often won awards such as the fastest growing agency and digital marketing agency of the year. And in 2021, they set a new benchmark by managing close to 4% of all digital ad spends that happen in India. Since then, they have grown to manage ad spends of over 1,000 crores and have a huge roster of marquee clients such as Tata Cliq, Mankind Pharma, Board, Jupiter, Licious, and many more. They have been the first players in this space to productize many services for influencers, marketplace promotions, and languages, and have been tirelessly dominating the space for over the last 12 years. Sunil is an IIM-Ahmedabad graduate who worked at Bain Consulting before starting his first company, Koolkart, an online social shopping platform, and has been building Socialbeat for the last 12 years. An article recently referred to Socialbeat as the tiger from the south, and I so look forward to doing a deep dive with Sunil today on the digital marketing space. Hi, Sunil. Welcome. How are you doing today? So glad
Hi,
to have you on
Shrishti.
board.
Well, no, lovely to have you be part of this nice initiative by your family office, and really exciting to see how you're telling the stories of a lot of entrepreneurs in India.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that for building so many consumer brands in India, your personal story was not out there for the world to hear. So I think it's a very inspiring story and it will inspire a lot more people. So I'm thrilled to get this opportunity to get your story and share it with the world.
No, thank you. Thanks for this, and lovely to connect as well, Shrishti.
Yeah, likewise. So, Sunil, let's start with this. Social Beat has seen such remarkable growth and success over the last 12 years. You manage 1,100 crores of digital ad spends in India today, which is almost 3% of the entire market. But success doesn't happen overnight. You've been at it tirelessly for 12 years. Let's start with what keeps you going and what's your personal ambition for the company?
Right. No, yeah, I think most of these journeys, turn out, I think, longer than one would expect. So I think while we've had good success, I think we'd love to get here sooner as well. But I think overall, given the team we have built, I think it's been a tremendous journey together with our core team and leadership. And I think we've, in the independent side, we are in the top handful of agencies, I'd say in the top three or four. I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of these network agencies as well, which are the global powerhouses. I think we've started beating them and, winning some clients from them over the last 3-4 years. And I think the goal as we go along is to, become one of the top three players in this ecosystem in India overall as well. Today we'd probably be in the seventh or eighth position. I think moving to third position, I think that's kind of what drives us, to be in the top three.
That's literally amazing. And when you think about, platforms like Google, Meta, obviously those you must have very strong relationships with, given, how much you are managing in terms of ad spend. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, how it's evolved? Because growing from a small agency must have been a very challenging, but, obviously fruitful journey for you in that sense. So How has the relationship changed for you with these big tech players?
No, absolutely. So I think goal is to be top three in India, but also start like having international clients. I think which have started over the recent years. I think Google, Meta, and the other platforms. Obviously, any agency partner without their strong support, it's difficult to really succeed, right? Because you need to
Yeah.
work very closely as a partner to these platforms. And I think we've been really lucky to connect with the right individuals in these organizations over the last decade or so. And I think our first advisor actually was a director at Google, and we were a small agency that time in a very small office, like a 500, 600 square feet office in an old building. But Shalini was the director that time at Google. I think she started mentoring us, to see how we can scale up and like compete with the best in the industry and in the world. And I think after that, we really started dreaming much bigger, and that really allowed us to take on some risks which normally we wouldn't have. I think when you have the confidence and mentorship from more senior colleagues in the industry who have been there, done that, I think that allowed us to take on some investments and risks which other agency partners did not do. And I think those have borne great fruit for us over the last 4 5 years. And I think Meta also we get very strong support today. I think also you have the share chats of the world, Snap, a lot of OTTs. We partnered with Salesforce recently, so I think the tech ecosystem in India continues to like expand, and that's a good space for us as well because uh, while we don't want to make the business more complex, I think with tech, anyway, things are getting a bit more complicated, and which is where the role of our agency partner also to one select the right marketing tech stack for the organization, and then using those tools to really drive business outcomes becomes meaningful as a value addition. So I think that's where we work very closely with a lot of these platforms and continue to expand our partnerships as well.
Yeah, I think, the reason why I asked this question was because I used to work at Meta, and the kind of focus that Meta puts on agency partners and, making sure that the agencies are succeeding, it is just something phenomenal. And I think they do whatever it takes to empower smaller and even bigger agencies who are helping brands on the platform grow. But, let's contextualize this for our audience also, because when you started in 2012, 2013, the market was very different, not as dynamic and complex. Can you just give a lay of the landscape, how it was back then?
Yeah, no, I think spot on. I think digital agencies as a term also is very, uh, new actually. I think don't think that term was there. You had the SEO agencies and like web development agencies. I think when we started, Facebook was really starting to take off in that sense, right? That Orkut era had passed us, and Facebook was like the norm. All of us in the mid 20s or late 20s were on Facebook at that point of time, and we starting to post some personal content. Brands are just starting to like leverage it to get some customers, but it was very early days. So our first few clients actually asked us, given our backgrounds, etc., and the kind of professions we left previously, they asked us like, "Are you really sure? You're doing this and leaving a lot of like better opportunities out there." But I think for us, it was more about being in a space which is uncharted to some extent. Today, obviously, if I was starting out today, I wouldn't start in the digital agency ecosystem because it's like super crowded, competitive. But like 10 years back, it wasn't. And I think that's what allowed us to experiment and, fail sometimes, succeed sometimes, and allowed us to build the capabilities to be one of the, recognized players in the ecosystem. So I think that time it was a bit of a, open waters that, you don't know where you're really headed in many ways. So,
Yeah, at that point, I don't think even you knew that, what a digital marketing agency could evolve into in that sense, a decade hence into running it. But let's take a step back to your early years, Sunil. Success later in life can usually be traced back to one's childhood and formative years. What were you like growing up? I know you grew up in Chennai. So, what were some of the key childhood experiences that shaped you into who you are today?
right? I think I'd say the upbringing has been like in a very close family atmosphere. So I think kind of prioritize family over other things. So I think being close to family, and which is why after working elsewhere in the US and in Bombay, Delhi, moved back to Chennai to start up because we wanted to be in Chennai with our family and our parents over here. So I think that was one key essence. I think the second was, both my grandfather and father were businessmen. They used to run a small NBFC. So I think there was some rooting of, building your own course, understanding different markets, and figuring out what's working, what's not working. Because even as an NBFC, you need to find new clients who are going to take loans, what is their risk assessment, etc. So we had some sense of that. Not, I wouldn't say a lot, right? Because I think as you're growing up, you just trust like what your parents are doing. But I think some of those conversations and some of the stresses as well as the profits, both you see that there's a massive opportunity, uh, and India is also obviously continuing to open up. But even 10, 12 years back, Flipkart was just starting out in some sense. They
Yeah.
just raised like that 20-30 million dollar round that time, right? Which is
Yeah.
nothing now. So I think we knew that the internet economy is taking off and there'll be some opportunities there. So let's figure out. We tried a bunch of other things also along the way. Some have worked out in the marketing tech space. Some which are not in this space have not worked out, because I think you don't give it enough focus, or you pull the plug before it's time, for example. So I think a lot of learnings in that journey as well.
Yeah, and very interesting. I didn't know about the NBFC background. Then, did it occur to you that you could possibly do something in fintech? Because that was also such a hot sector at that time. Obviously, not as hot as it today, but back in the early 2014, 15 kind of period, I think fintech was one sector which was really booming. And coming from a family history of it, I'm sure that it must have crossed your mind at some point.
To some extent, I think like we are Sindhis, so a lot of Sindhis have been in the finance space.
Yeah,
But I think one part of being in that space also, all the risks, right? So you know
yeah,
that how many people don't want to repay loans, and okay, if it's a secured loan, they'll pay it back, but unsecured loans, it's not really easy to collect, especially if
yeah,
it's a corporate company and they are going through a tough time, then you are probably looking at a bad debt over there.
yeah,
So we saw more of the risks in this, and I think at a small scale you can still manage the risk by personally assessing companies, but at a large scale we were not sure if we would be able to pull it off, honestly. So we're like, that's probably not a space we want to touch early in our careers. Maybe as a second stint we could explore it, because I think some of our clients are NBFCs, like large NBFCs, and I think 1,000, 2,000 crore PAT, like a
yeah,
profit after tax. So they're like, yeah, that's the space to really be in, where because capital obviously
yeah.
multiplies, and I think compounding also works really well in finance compared to like
Yeah.
other sectors.
Yeah, very interesting. But also, before Social Beat, you tried to build Koolkart, an online shopping platform. While that did not work out, it laid the foundation for you to start Social Beat. Tell us about the learnings from that experience and how did you deal with failure and what was the inspiration that led you to Social Beat after that?
Yeah, no, I think like a lot of good learnings from there. I think we started Koolkart in 2011, me and one of my junior batchmates from business school, and I think we had some clue about the e-commerce space, but not too much, So I think we started like a price comparison engine to compare prices for like a mobile phone or gadget across different websites, right? So you had Amazon and Flipkart. That time Snapdeal was pretty big, and
Yeah.
Infibeam, etc. So it was like a price comparison engine, and we also built some social shopping features. So you could see like what your friends are buying, what kind of reviews are they leaving for the products, etc. I think we got some traction from the users. Like we got to around 100,000 visitors a month at one point, 100, 150,000. But monetization was very low at that point of time. And what we saw is it's a 6, 7 year journey to get to a certain scale, and you need to keep raising funding to kind of survive that. And I think our first like tryst, before when we were just starting Koolkart, we had spoken to one investor, and I think while initial conversations are going well, then after some point, like that investor wanted 90% of the company, for a few
Oh,
crores
wow.
of investment.
Those were the days also where angel investors would make these ridiculous asks.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
would,
yeah.
because,
And that
yeah,
was a pretty well accomplished entrepreneur. But I think that time, obviously, I think entrepreneurs are also successful sometimes because they are sharks. So then we
yeah,
realized that you need to really understand what you're getting into and what context. So after that, like while we tried to raise funding from Axel, Sequoia, etc., I think the aggregation space was relatively small because e-commerce
yeah,
itself was a smaller market, sub $1 billion. So they were not too keen in that business model. And then we realized that, hey, we don't want to really build a business which relies on external funding to continuously like scale up, which is how we started Socialbeat. My brother Vikas started it for the first few months, and then we started getting more clients because of our work with Koolkart as well, where we had got good
right.
traction. So that became like a feeder to get more clients. And I think after that we started focusing on it because there was decent cash flow. And I think we're just learning how to do business in India, like as 30-year-olds. Like
Yeah.
it's a good journey. So just buckled down and built a small team and started doing some fun work.
That's actually a very core design choice that you made in the business, right? Like in terms of not relying on external funding and only getting funded by your customers. How has that worked out for you? Do you, because when you look at a space and you work with clients who have raised so much funding, and that you are managing those ad dollars also for them. So how does it compare? Like, is there some cognizance in your mind that you could have probably raised funding and you could have scaled much faster? Does that thought ever cross your mind?
Many times. So I think the grass is like probably always greener on the other side because we
Yeah,
talk to like a lot of founders who are probably valued at even 4,000 crores, but they would be making losses and a lot of stress. They'd be like, your business is
yeah,
a better business, like that's
yeah,
EBITDA at the end of the year. But we would be like, hey, see, you're getting a great return on your time invested because you can multiply your wealth significantly if things work out well, and
yeah.
also the impact you create at scale is much better. So I think both journeys have their merits. I think we have done the bootstrap journey with Social Beat. So I think whenever we do like launch our next like venture, I think we will look at like a venture capital funded model probably. So
Agency models usually are very people and services dependent and also have high churn, which are problems that you must have dealt with endlessly while building Social Beat over the last 12 years. However, you've done something very contrarian in this space. You've actually productized a lot of the offerings, be it for influencers or languages and even marketplace promotions. What were the factors that led you into building the agency so uniquely when everyone else was taking a services first approach?
yeah. So I think like the agency model is like to a large extent services first, right? Like can't
Yeah.
get away from that. So I think building the right culture and building a strong team. I think that's been the core, and I think we've been uh, lucky to a large extent to also get that initial core team, which is very nice and has stuck along through that journey, and that's really cemented a strong culture of ownership and mutual respect in the organization. I think the investments in tech at the same time. I think this is also thanks to our advisors and mentors, right, which we've had. I think investing in these is not really a choice in that sense because it's kind of like the market will evolve. If you don't do it, then you are going to become irrelevant at some point of time to your clients. So I think we've just made these investments a few years before like other independent agencies did. Some of them have started doing it now. Some who want to survive will do it in the next 1 or 2 years. So I think it's just a matter of timing, and when do you take those bets to make those investments. And I think one good advice we had got, which I also share with other friends and like founders who are just starting out, is to take some money which you're investing and put it aside as invested capital itself. Don't treat it as your money, because say you're investing 3 crores in tech for the year, then you take that money and keep it aside separately, conceptually. So then you don't feel emotionally attached to it. It is like invested capital, and you can take business calls on whether that's the right investment or not. But you're not
Yeah.
treating it as your personal wealth going from your bank account, because that becomes very subjective. You're like, okay, am I going to get immediate ROI on that 3 crores? Probably not. It's going to take
Yeah.
5 years for you to get it. You may not get it also. So I think looking at it more from a business entity separately from your personal finances, I think that's definitely helped us make some of those investments, which I'd say 70% have worked out, 30% haven't worked out as well. So
Yeah, because, but that's such an important insight for bootstrap founders, because a lot of the times you do think of whatever the business income is your personal wealth, or people start thinking that way, especially first time entrepreneurs. It takes a while to come to a place where you feel comfortable at looking at it as business income and not your personal wealth. That's a very key distinction. It happens relatively later for at least first time entrepreneurs when they start out.
right, yeah, no, it's. I think we also didn't do it for the first few years, right? I think after we had like our mentor, we have a mentor, Ravi, who's based out of Manchester now, but he used to be in Chennai earlier. And I think him and like the advisor, Shalini, I think they helped us zoom out a bit and think more long term, like, okay, what are you building? And we were obviously not happy being a small like agency and just maximizing profits at that level. So then if you want to scale significantly, that's going to require investments by design. And I think that's where those bets become easy then, because you're like, yes, I can't be at this level for the next 2 years. Just
Yeah.
incremental growth is not good enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you want to talk about some of the products that you've been able to build? Because I remember looking at the dashboard and was completely blown away with the kind of insights that you have for brand owners, where everything is so plugged in that you literally get updates by the hour, by the minute. Would you want to talk about the platforms, the
Sure. So I
products?
think like two large platforms and one is like a smaller network. I think the influencer.in is one of our key products which we have worked on over the last 4 5 years, and I think we are one of the leaders in the influencer marketing space, not just from an execution side but also from the tech side, where we have really strong solutions for brands to identify the right creators, understand what's working for competition, track real time analytics, as well as identify which creators have the right kind of customers following them as well. So a lot of those insights have helped us maximize the ROI. We have Google, Meta as our clients as well there. So I think normally as a digital agency, we may not have had them as our clients, but because of this product, we've been able to do that and also expand to some international clients in the gaming space thanks to this product. I think the second one is the D2 Scale, which is our e-commerce product. This is around 2 years back we started productizing on the commerce side. Uh, I'd say a little like later compared to say like a Unicommerce, etc., which are going for IPO now, but they work more on the back end. Our focus is more on the front end in terms of what kind of campaigns are we running for the brands, and are they well optimized? Are the creatives being optimized uh, for each cohort of customer, for example? And I think like a lot of that work was manual, and Google Meta automating it, but agencies have not really spent efforts on automating from their side. So
Yeah.
these efforts are also helping us improve our productivity and efficiency, and increase like our average revenue per team member as well, and also be more agile for our customers, because say something breaks on a Saturday evening, no like campaign manager or media specialist is going to take a look on Saturday night, right? And
Yeah.
so this dashboard also has like triggers and alerts. So some campaign is breaking in terms of the ROI, for example, then it sends a WhatsApp alert to our team saying that this campaign needs to be looked at right away, right? So that agility to be aligned to the client's needs, because the digital shop is open 24/7. So your team can't be on 24/7. Just from a work-life balance perspective. But if it's required, then they can always step in. So I think that's kind of the tech we've been building over the last 2 years, and obviously recently with AI, I think that's the next key part of integrating that and making sure that some of the creative work as well as the analytics is AI enabled at least.
Yeah. Very interesting. I think that was our first discussion as well about Pixel not firing for 24 hours and no one noticing it over a weekend and realizing much later. And those things are very real, right? They happen all the time across different brands. But most agencies don't have the bandwidth to be able to cater to that. But productizing it has been so key. And I'm sure you are reaping the benefits of investing in that very early on as well. But you mentioned something average revenue per team member. Is that a metric that you track internally? I would love to talk about the company culture and how you incentivize people also. But let's talk about the metric that you mentioned.
So we have, I think, as a value add. So I think like one challenge in the advertising space has also been like some of the larger like agencies started like not in India but globally starting hiring a lot of entry level talent, interns, etc., and kind of reducing the uh, quality of talent within an agency. If you see the
Yeah.
old Ogilvies of the world, they would get the best talent from the top like business schools, creative houses. But I think with the economics of the agency ecosystem reducing, where clients were paying less, then automatically there was more pressure to uh, onboard anyone who can just fill that seat in some sense, right? So you didn't have the best talent entering your organization. So then the contribution to the client also is not top class. So we took a conscious call that we actually want to get the best talent in the industry, and that's not defined necessarily by top business schools, but also when you find like smart people, how do you enable that growth at an accelerated pace, which is equal or even competes with some of the startups, for example, right, in terms of the pace of their remuneration growth. And for that to happen, or obviously our revenue also has to grow up for us to remunerate that talent effectively. So we have aligned in terms of how much value are we able to add to different clients so that we become key partners to those clients and maximize our revenue, which then enables us to put the best team, the best tech, the best creative talent for that client. So then it's a virtuous cycle of the right people driving good business outcomes. So the client's also happy to give us more work. That has been a good engine. I think we have been, I'd say, reasonably successful at it over the last 3 years, but still a long way to go in the next 3 years as we want to be the top three agencies in India.
I think I read your motto somewhere, one heart, one beat, which is deeply ingrained in the fabric of Social Beat, which is known to have a very strong company culture. You're known to nurture and retain talent for far longer than any other agency. What have you learned about managing people in the last decade? And how do you think about designing a company's culture?
Right. So I think like today's, I think India has a lot of opportunities, right? So I think it's the onus of the organization to provide the right kind of environment and setup for a person to succeed and want to stay on. Otherwise,
Yeah.
after 1 or 2 years, it is the society today. A person will evaluate whether I should stay on in a particular organization, right? So
Especially younger folks these days, right? Like they want to switch jobs 6 months, a year. That's
yes,
become
because
a
they're not
trend.
feeling satisfied, right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't really blame them. And doing the same thing
Yeah.
day in day out, you're like, okay, let me try something new. So
Yeah.
I think we, for example, got a very senior like CHRO on board, Pavan, like I think it's been 2.5, 3 years back. So that's like we are a 300 odd member organization, but the investment we made was for like a 800 or 1,000 member organization, right? So I think. starting to make investments in areas which enable our talent to be the best in class. So we have a learning and development manager, and who's again quite senior in terms of setting up different programs for talent. So a lot of the learning is on the job, but still it needs to be complemented with structured training, evaluation, whether team members are progressing in a particular journey. So those elements make it more worthwhile for our colleagues to learn different aspects of marketing. And I think also the ability to switch between like different roles. I think we've seen that also really be a helpful initiative to retain top talent. And I think the other area is also we have expanded. So growth automatically creates new opportunities for leadership as well, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's why growth is not, it has to be there at a strong rate to retain top talent. So if you're growing really well, then automatically top talent sees opportunities where they can go in and like create a large impact. And that's kind of helped us stay on. We've also expanded to 4 cities instead of many agencies and one location. So in Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, and Chennai. So each city also you need strong leadership where they are creating that culture and systems and processes. So that's also I think we've had more leaders because of the way it's been set up compared to some of the other agencies.
Yeah, and I think one thing which is on every agency founder's mind is that, if we train them too well, they are going to leave and start their own agency, which is what happens in a lot of these cases also. So, is that something that you've thought about? Because you are giving them all the resources and the learning material to really train them. You are investing a lot in them, right? But is that something that you think about in terms of employee attrition?
No, I think it's fine. I think we assume that person may move out after a certain point of time, and it's our role, the whoever's leading that person as well as HR combined have to create the right opportunities for that person to grow. I think what we need to expect from them is that they're ambitious, hungry, giving it their best always, and the rest, is also the onus of the organization to enable them. And if we fail, then they will move on. So I think we see like learning and development and growth as it's a joint handshake between the individual and the organization. So if sometimes it doesn't work out, that's fine. But I think to not enable that growth would be shortchanging both the person as well as the organization and the clients as well, right? Because they are trusting
Yeah.
us with their business. So I think I don't see any conflict over there. I think also like the industry is small. A lot of our ex-colleagues are also our clients now. They would go in our organization and like
Yeah.
all social beat. So I think it's part of the ecosystem. You do well and help everyone in that journey, and I think we do reap the rewards over a period of time as well.
Yeah, I think what's always stood out to me is a very paid forward culture in Social Beat. And I think that really stands in building a strong company culture as well.
Thank you.
But coming to, how the macro space in itself has changed in terms of, there are many big challenges that the big tech companies face, which have caused changes at an execution level of running ads, right? For example, Apple blocking Meta's access or Google's pledge to phase out third party cookies from Chrome. How do you navigate these challenges internally and how do you prepare for them?
Yeah, I think like cookieless world is headed there, but
Yeah.
I think both Google and Meta have kind of figured out how to navigate around that to a large extent. I think obviously you have like CAPI conversions and signals which go directly from the brand to Google and Meta instead of using third-party cookies. I think the one big area is like first-party data becomes a lot more important in this case for brands. So like CDPs and customer journeys through like WebEngage or Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, those become really important. So we started investing in these initiatives and practices around 3 years back. So that's helped us like start to get like really good brands on board for these customer journeys and CDPs. We have some clients in the UK and Australia as well for these practices because those markets are like maybe 2 years ahead of India in terms of adoption of these tools and technologies. So it's kind of helped us expand internationally as well. But our focus is to continue, like being very strong in the Indian market. So I think seeing a little bit ahead, I think obviously being like one of the strong partners for Google and Meta, they also guide us in terms of what else we should be investing and doing to succeed in this ecosystem. I think there'll always be the space evolves a lot, right? So every
Yeah.
year, like uh, like D2C was a buzzword 3 years back, but now everyone's on marketplaces, right? Like
Yeah.
D2C brands have really slowed down on the direct to customer sales for most brands, except for certain segments. So I think we also need to keep evolving like every year in that sense.
Yeah. And how do you manage to navigate these waves? Maybe what we could do is we could deep dive into one brand's journey when they start working with Social Beat. At what stage is the sweet spot for you to partner with a brand? And how does the journey evolve for you as the brand grows? Would be great if you can share one or two examples of your favorite growth stories fueled by Social Beat.
So I think like it's kind of fair, but not fair also. Like because we like every client and brand is
Yeah.
something we love, right? That's how we take it on. I think.
Or maybe let me rephrase the question into
Yeah.
the most unexpected growth or something that you weren't expecting and it happened and grew very significantly very quickly.
Yeah, no. I think so. We've had like really strong successes both on the new age companies as well as like more established companies scaling up online. So I think a new age company, for example, both we started working with Aman and his team 6-7 years back. He was in a small office in Hoskars, like
Yeah.
maybe 10-15 team members. So it's been amazing journey to see how they've built both to be such a like mammoth brand in people's hearts. And I think we've been fortunate. We've had a role to play over there, in that journey. And I think at each stage, the requirements and the focus changes, right? Because you crack one problem, then you move to the next problem. So 3 years back, we partnered with them to launch their D2C website because
Right.
first 4-5 years they were just on marketplaces actually where they maximized sales. And I think in the last 2-3 years we've been able to make that D2C website a significant percentage of their revenue as well, which was not something which was part of the business plan also in some sense because they thought
Right.
why would someone come to our website and buy when you can buy on Amazon or Flipkart. So I think it's been really interesting to see some of these companies just like shoot up beyond because when you're sitting in that office and you're thinking of a 20 lakh marketing budget, you don't think that this brand's going to sell for 2,000 or 3,000 crores. Now they are 3,500, 4,000 crores this year. So
Yeah.
it's like a phenomenal journey to see, how some of these
And
founders.
how big were they when you started in the
I
Hoscars
think
office?
like a 10-15 member team, right? So it's like we 150th or 170th of
Yeah.
where they are right now. So I think,
Wow.
yeah. And I think we today we also work with like a lot of established brands and I think larger brands, right? I think there the challenges are more of like a brand is already loved to some extent, but how do you increase that brand love and make it more relevant to the audience, right? So,
Right.
like Samsonite, we work with in the luggage space, for example. It's already a pretty well-known brand, but then how do you do it? So, we did a really interesting campaign with like Sania Mirza, Milind Soman earlier this year. We work with Jaguar, which is in bathroom fittings. I think they are 60-70% market share in that category. So how do you continue dominating that? Because a lot of new brands are coming in, a lot of imported
Right.
brands. So I think that's one challenge. And then we have a lot of these e-commerce brands which are traditionally 99% sales offline and 1% sales online. And a lot of new brands are coming in and kind of eating their lunch in some sense. So how do you protect your territory and expand online, make that a large part? So very like different challenges compared to a D2C or a digital first brand where you're
Yeah.
just starting from a relatively young base. We usually come in around the Series A stage for funded startups and
Right.
enterprise companies when they're starting to invest $1 million+ on digital. usually. So 1 million to 15, 20 million is the range which we normally end up working on.
Got it. Amazing. And that's incredible success in terms of boat itself growing with Social Beat. But there is a huge boom in the Indian consumer space. Investors keep talking about how there will be many 500,000 crore brands. Whereas, just 5 years ago, I don't think anyone thought that, brands could achieve 1,000 crores plus revenue, because there weren't examples of that even in the listed space, right?
Right.
There were barely sub 100 kind of brands which were there, which had been able to cross the 500 crore revenue mark. And now this happens pretty much on a monthly basis for brands. In your opinion, what goes into the successful brands? What goes into the makings of a successful brand?
I think many things have to come right. I'm sure, like you as an investor, would be seeing that, right? And
Mm.
I think the number one is that they have a much deeper understanding of the customer and have a relevant solution which addresses a problem which no one else is doing, right? I think finding that white space,
Yeah,
which, like even board, for example, you can say, oh, okay, it's like just headphones, but at that price point, with that quality, with the aspirational brand, that's the gap which both identified, which others couldn't at that point of time. Today, obviously, there are a few other brands who are starting to come in and compete with them. So I think similarly that we work with like Kapiva, for example, which is in the Ayurvedic space. So a lot of treatments for problems which people face, right? Either it could be on energy or hair loss. So identifying things which larger brands have missed out, either because the market size is too small or they're focused on other priorities. I think folks who've figured out how to identify that space faster, I think we have seen that be like one of the key areas. Two, from a marketing perspective, I think brands which focus too much on immediate transactions and forget the brand building part, I think those we have seen get commoditized or stuck in a plateau after a period of time, because then they've not built a brand but they built revenue, and then
yeah,
there's not that much consumer love or differentiation there. So you'll get to a certain point and then like it's difficult at that point to suddenly invest a lot in branding. So I think we've seen brands which continue to invest in brand building across the journey, even from their very early days. Capital might be tight, but how do you make efficient use of that capital to invest in branding? It could be through a celebrity tie-up or like influencer marketing with smaller creators, or even the packaging and the way the customer experience is done
yeah,
online. I think those elements all add up to make customers repeat. And end of the day, like you're trying to find some mind space in the consumer's mind. He or she has so many brands to already think of.
yeah,
So unless you're special for some reason, I think it's, and doesn't always rely on communication. I think the product plays a strong part, like 95% of the time, right? Maybe 5% of the cases, it's more marketing led
yeah.
success. So we see product centric success, and then matching that with the right marketing initiatives really drive strong success for brands to reach to that 500,000 crores. Otherwise,
Yeah.
100, 200 crores, like today, I think many brands are reaching without too much branding as well.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about some examples of brands which might be very young brands but are doing things very interestingly or have been able to carve a very unique place for themselves? Because D2C in itself has become so crowded, right? Like if you look at the personal care space, there are hundreds of brands there. If you look at supplements or any kind of health, wellness kind of space, also, there are so many brands in the space. So, any interesting brands that have personally stood out to you? They could be clients of yours or it could be independent brands.
Yeah, I think there are a lot, right? I think like we work with a couple of brands which are exporting, like Kapiva is launched in the US. There's a D2C company called Shobhitam with
Yeah,
Aparna, who's also like a big angel investor, selling saris to the world, right? But I think even like Vadam Teas, I'd say like folks who are able to build brands not just for India but for the world, I think that's really impressive, because I
yeah,
think we've not historically been known to create brands which the world loves. So I think that's the next frontier in some sense. SaaS has been successful to create some world-class products from India, but D2C brands, I say that many brands are doing that now. I think Amazon, Google, and Meta are supporting these companies actively as well with like accelerators and mentorship
Yeah.
processes, etc. So I see more of those coming up in the next like 1 or 2 years in terms of international brands from India.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've also noticed. Cross-border commerce, or especially opening up to the US and UAE markets, which come very naturally to Indian founders somehow these days. Whereas that was never the case. We were never the exporters of brands per se. We've always exported to different markets, but now India is, for the first time, is truly exporting brands and consumer brands that maybe have started in India, getting traction elsewhere, which is very impressive to see. But as a follow up to, when you see these successful brands, there are also hundreds of brands that did not work out or failed. What are the biggest contributing factors, do you think, in those cases? And what should founders not do when building their brands?
Yeah, difficult, right? Every founder tries their best to succeed. I'm sure, like it's a lot of blood and sweat. So I think it's always difficult to criticize someone because everyone gives it their best. I think many reasons for failures we have seen over the years. I think one is obviously like the problem being solved is there, but monetization for that problem is a it's not like easy, where the
Yeah.
client is not willing to pay for that value easily, right? And I think then you have to pivot your business model to a different area, like a lot of edtech companies in the SaaS space and the Kirana space, for example, Kirana Tech. A lot of them got amazing traction, like 10, 15 million users also.
Yeah.
But then very few of them actually want to pay for that SaaS. So I think that is obviously investors raise the valuation, assuming some percentage of those will convert into paid customers with some LTV, etc. So
Yeah.
I think we've seen that, I'm leaving aside like non-PMF cases where you've already not met that product market fit, obviously you're not going to succeed. But after product market fit, I think monetization's been one area. I think we see even very large companies which are number one or two in their category, they also struggle to get to positive EBITDA margins over a period,
Yeah.
right? Because the economics are not there for that business model. So then they need to find a new business model around those customers to make it happen, which I think smart entrepreneurs uh, you know, uh, with just a brute force, they figure out many times. It is quite impressive to see, they would have started with something and then they make money somehow in a different fashion. So we've
Yeah.
seen that, but that's not always easy, especially if you've built an organization for a specific purpose and culture. Then pivoting it, I think it also emotionally must be draining for the founder to put in 4 5 years, then like kind of pivot and find a new way to make money. So I think we've seen some failures there, unfortunately, but I think that's part of the consumer internet space as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you touched upon something so important. I think, investors also over the last 2, 3 years sometimes overcapitalized consumer tech and consumer brands to an extent where, they were expecting brands to grow like tech companies. And, as someone who has been traditionally a tech investor now doing consumer brands, one also realizes that, you cannot 5x growth every year for a brand. It will happen for some outlier companies, but you cannot force that for founders, right? Like, unless it's a very exceptional founder with a very exceptional product, it rarely happens. But somehow, in investors, when they were funding these companies over the last 2, 3 years, there was so much capital, more than that, what was required at that point given to
How
these
do you all
companies.
look at the growth rates for companies, at your like family office?
I think, one very healthy signal for us is, at least some growth month on month. It could be 15, 20% also, because if you look at the whole year, then it's almost like, the company is growing at 2 to 5x even, but like it's not always the case. But as long as there are very strong signals of month on month growth and very strong retention numbers, I think, consumer brands are not built by the first time they are able to push a product through ads. They are actually built because of the retention and repeat rates that you have from customers. So that is a big signal of customer love, right? Consumer love. You were talking about consumer love. Does this product have a pull in the market? So
Yeah.
while we'll do interviews with consumers who might be buying these products, so those are the softer signals we end up looking for a lot, apart from things like retention and repeat rates.
Right. No, no, absolutely. I think that's why a lot of the marketing automation to increase, retention and repeat rates is also starting to take off because, CACs continue to go up in
Yeah.
the market, and I think the economics don't work unless you have good retention.
Absolutely. And I think be it remarketing or re-engagement, I think those are some things which have picked up only in the recent few years. Earlier, it was all about just get your product out there to one customer who will buy it from you. But now it's a lot more about retention, repeat marketing, and founders are also getting smarter about it in terms of trying to crack that.
That's true.
Yeah. Given you launched influencer.in that manages over 150,000 influencers on the platform and enables them to connect with brands, what do you think will happen in the influencer economy in the next 5 to 10 years? Because this is a space that has evolved so significantly. A lot of the influencers have helped with creation of brands. They are launching their own brands now also. There's so much which has changed in the last 5 years. So, how do you see the space evolving in the next five?
Yeah, 5 years is a long time. I think 5 years back there was no creator space. So
Yeah.
I think, we got influencer.in as a domain because that was no one was looking at influencer marketing 5, 6 years back. So I think
Yeah.
I'm like sure like very few people would know how it will evolve in 5 years, right? Because like phenomena like TikToks, etc., come and just
Yeah.
take within a year or two. So I think over the next 1 or 2 years itself, I think what we are seeing is like a lot more investments in this space by brands to collaborate with creators and tell authentic stories. I think with this food farmer, the influencer space, for example, I think authenticity has become a lot more important where people want to know that, okay, even if it's being sold to me, am I getting the full picture, right? So influencers who also talk about the positive, but some of the negative aspects of a brand as well. Say, for example, if you're doing a phone review, if the battery life is not great, so then the review should capture that, hey, the battery life is not great, but it has this excellent camera and these features. So I think that authenticity a lot of consumers are looking for, but still also glamour and just uh, like premium appeal also really works well for many brands. So I think, but the market is moving more towards authenticity to some extent. But India is an aspirational country, so glamour and I think showing that it's cool to do that. I think that continues to still be the number one thing. You see all these restaurants that come up, bars. So a
Yeah.
lot uh, traction from influencer marketing over there. My brother-in-law opened a apparel store sometime back, like 6, 8 months back, and I
Right.
think 75% of his revenue comes from Instagram influencers. And
Wow.
he's like, it's such a because he's like 40 odd, and he's like, he never thought like when he started his store like 10 years back, it used to be all just retail footfalls coming of people walking, but now
Yeah.
people come from 8, 10 kilometers away to check out like dresses and shirts in his store, right? And I think it's difficult to actually appreciate how much impact some
Yeah.
of these influencers have on local commerce as well. So I think we are seeing a lot of that happen where it's not just the top brands, but it's kind of getting democratized to that extent where everyone's using creators to tell authentic stories.
Very interesting. And let me ask you this, when you're working with a brand, how much budget would you allocate towards influencer marketing compared to the overall budget? Because performance marketing, obviously, the CACs are ever increasing. And if the influencers can create a more relatable persona for the brand, Are you driving a bigger push towards that, or how do you think about a budget? Think
Yeah,
of it from a perspective of maybe a founder who's just raised their Series A and is thinking of designing their marketing budget for the
yeah.
year.
No, I think like I'd spoken to someone at Honasa, like Mama. For their new brands, they invest up to 55%, I think, of their marketing budgets on influencer marketing. I think for most brands, because like 50% would be like too high an amount. I think
Yeah,
10 to 30% is what we have seen most founders and management be comfortable with in terms of maximizing it. And I think that's still a reasonable point, like the 20 to 30% range. Under that, you're probably under leveraging it as a platform because of some concerns you may have. There are some spaces, obviously, where it may not work, but I'd say by and large, across the segment from health to travel, finance, I think creators are having a very large impact. And I think most brands always a few years late to the party in that sense, right? So I think the early adopters have maximized it. Like a Mama Earth knows that let's put 50% of our budget here, but
yeah.
like many brands will be like, oh, that's crazy. Why would I put 50% of my marketing spends here? So, but I think the forward-looking brands are doing it more aggressively.
Yeah, and I think there's also a trend of, the macro influencers or people who have very huge following. Sometimes those are not the best brand partners, whereas, the micro and nano influencers are the more appealing ones to brands, because sometimes also the fact is that the macro influencers have started charging so obnoxiously that they've become unaffordable
Yeah.
for most brands, right? So what do you think is the trend that you are seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. We at influencer.in actually created this fair price index. We said actually because there's no way to say how much a person should be charging, and then you ask a creator and they'll ask which brand is it for, and based on the brand they used to quote. It's like dynamic pricing based on brands.
Yeah,
So I think what we created is like for our team and the tool to give an indicative price that hey, it's ideally with this reach engagement for this kind of category, this creator should be getting X amount of money for a post or content. Because anything more than that, probably the brand is getting shortchanged a lot. And less than that, it's good for the brand because they're getting a great deal in terms
yeah,
of the engaged users. So I think, like to your point, the small and mid creators have a lot more impact at scale, but there's also the like trust and impact which macro creators also have with
yeah,
the right kind of tie-up. So we have seen a mix of those, campaigns work the best, and also led by like an umbrella campaign or an idea. If you're just getting people to do something very normal and it's not memorable, then people will just move on very quickly from that content. So how do you
yeah,
create content which has like a slight recall value? You may not be able to create a lot, but at least when they see it, they feel like, okay, let me go check out the website. Let me see the product page. What is this brand selling? Why should I explore this? Some categories like say cooking stove or an air conditioner. It's not like I see a air conditioner ad or a vacuum cleaner ad, I'm going to buy it tomorrow, right?
yeah,
But how do you create the brand so that when they want it, they come back to your website? So I think like a good mix is what we have seen drive the best impact. Uh, I think even sampling is working really well for consumer brands, where you say like send a sample to 1,000 creators, and then they,
yeah,
whoever wants, they can post content about it. That's a low cost way for brands to engage with these creators. And from a ROI perspective, we have actually seen the maximum ROI with these sampling campaigns because you're not paying the creator any
yeah.
amount.
And because the audience is always curious, what do you think influencers who are on top of their game make when they are partnering with brands? Just like, of
Yeah, I think
the,
like the top like gaming, some of these creators make like 15 to 30 CR a year, right? So it's like phenomenal. And I think many of the top creators, like 1 to 2 crores a year, like there'll be I'd say maybe between 400 to 1,000 creators who make in the like 1 CR plus. range, which is like pretty phenomenal if you'd ask me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing for something that didn't even exist as a market 5 years ago, right? To see that kind of depth happen so quickly. I think that is why I wanted to ask this question about the influencer marketing and how the space is going to evolve, because very interesting trends we can already see happening here. With Sunil, coming to your personal life story again, I'm sure there are times where things don't go as planned, and there must be deals that you don't get mandates for, and a lot of challenging times that might come your way while dealing with building an agency. So what is your self talk or mindset when navigating these tough life situations?
I think like one, it's like my brother is my co-founder at Socialbeat, so I think that's always like great support to have a co-founder. I think in my
Yeah,
case it's my brother, so we say even more in common and more trust in that sense. But I think when seeing other startups and founders, I think having that support system, so that you're not talking to yourself, because then you can be in a loop in a tough
yeah,
time. Because even if you're negative, the other person may have a positive perspective on that at point of time. And I think the other thing we've had is always like one mentor and one advisor, and like Ravi and Shalini. And I think they've been able to help us zoom out. And even if we are in success, also zoom out a bit, because success also doesn't always continue. So you'll face like a roadblock at a certain point in the journey, because when things are going well, you're like, hey, this is great. Like, just let's straight line growth, which you
yeah,
tell others that it's not going to happen, but you internally believe like, hey, I've like figured this out. It's going to go in a straight line up now. But
yeah,
obviously, there are challenges which come in, because you have to change, your value proposition or the type of solutions you're providing, for example. So I think in both like good times and bad times, having a little balanced view and not being either over like zealous or over pessimistic, right? I think actually in bad times you should be more optimistic, I feel, and in good times be a bit more conservative, because I think we've seen that you like, at least personally, I felt if I'm in positive, then I would have previously gone a bit more aggressive and take on more risk in good
yeah.
times, and really dial down in bad times. So now it's kind of a bit more balancing. Yeah, good times are followed by bad times, and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's true for life as well, right? Like it's such a roller coaster with highs and lows. So you just have to navigate those challenges as you would in business as well. And coming to the last question, Jeff Bezos's regret minimization framework is something that I love, where he looks at himself at the age of 80 and takes a lot of life decisions backwards. By thinking of what he would want to do at the age of 80. So, can you specifically distill it into one significant learning, one regret, and one profound insight that you would have possibly at the age of 80?
Yeah, I think like there's this one song, "Wear Sunscreen." Have you heard it?
Yeah,
Best,
yeah, of course. I love that.
yeah, so I think I kind of resonate. There are many things which are important in life. I think
Yeah,
business is one of those to some extent, but not. I think shouldn't become the only identity for an individual. I think life is rich, lived more fully, and I think there are many different types of advices, so each one has their own path. For me personally, I think having some balanced life, strong professional success, but with quality family time, as well as like good health as well. I
yeah,
think having that combination has been an important focus for me, at least. And I think that's why that Bad Sunscreen song resonates well with me, where, you want to be ambitious. Like, I think the other song I like is Waving Flag, for example. Like,
yeah,
go out there, do things, but enjoy the journey as well. No, don't take too much stress. There will be, like social beat, we would like to get to like a much higher scale by now, but it's fine. Like, you can't beat yourself up too much about it. Push hard, but, also enjoy the journey at the same point of time.
yeah, absolutely. Those are such great lessons, and what a beautiful note to end the episode with. Also, coming to the last segment, Sunil, just have some rapid fire questions for you before we wrap up. Are there any books, podcasts, or resources that have had a profound impact on your life or career?
Uh, I think there's this World Science Festival. It's like a YouTube channel along with your
Yeah.
India Opportunity podcast. Have you seen it? Like Brand Green.
No, I haven't actually.
So they're like more. They get like a lot of Nobel laureates, and at the cutting edge of science. So they talk about like right from like the cosmos and how it's been created, and what's happening right now in terms of the universe, or even like things like free will, right? Is there free
Yeah.
will for a person, for example? How do you decide what thoughts you're having as such? So like more complex things, and then you realize that actually we don't know many things, right from
Yeah.
like how are thoughts formed, and can I decide to cross the road, or am I made to cross the road, for example, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I think that channel's been really like all my flights, which I do travel a lot. I think those kind of episodes help me just kind of zoom out of like day to day work and like think a bit like bigger and broader.
I love it.
Sorry,
That
it's not a
sounds.
quick answer to your rapid fire.
No, I personally love it because I am very interested in these subjects. So we'll definitely check it out. Who had the most formative influence in your life?
No, definitely my parents. I think both my mom and dad, slightly different personalities, but I think mom's a bit more anxious, always, caring. Like love is never greater than anyone than your mom, right? Like no one
Yeah.
can love you more. And dad always, some discipline and like push to like go achieve things. I think so. It's been a great like support in life for sure.
Amazing. I think that's the most common answer also that we hear from everyone. One professional and one personal goal over the next year.
Professional, I think like we want to do that journey to the top three agencies in India. So continuing to do things which enable that to happen in due course. I think that's we have our own like organizational goals which we have set, but I think that's kind of what I would think. On the personal front, I don't think I've fixed a goal actually right now, but I think continuing to like be fit and do some good exercise and more quality time with my kids. I have two kids, Muskan and Krish. I think that's definitely something I really enjoy.
Amazing. And if you were to write a book about your life, what would the title be?
Yeah, I think like one of those, I think waving flag or wear sunscreen or something on those lines, like a little bit abstract-ish. But I think be hungry, but like I think that stay hungry, stay foolish. I think there's a book by that. I think those kind of words really resonate with me.
Love it. What are you most proud of?
Yeah, I think like we're really happy with the kind of culture which we have built at Socialbeat, and I think like organizations are not families, they say, but I think at least having that garwala feeling to a large extent, where people take care of each other. Obviously things sometimes don't work out, but having
Yeah.
that ecosystem where each one is supported, and we have a lot of young colleagues as well, so being enabling that journey with the right frame of mind and giving them an environment where they go out happy. I think that's I think something I've been really happy with.
Yeah, amazing. And what's the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
Kindest, I think many, right? I
You
think
spoke about Ravi and
I think
Shalini
they
quite a
paid
few times.
forward like one thing which like Ravi is our mentor. We met him at like a party like 10 years back, and he's kind of guided us for 10 years, like pro bono, always available on a call or regular like mentoring sessions. So I think seeing his approach to like pay it forward, I think that's really been like a gift to us to also like have that perspective in life as well.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show, Sunil. I loved the insights that you've shared with us today, and I'm sure the audience will love it too. Thank you for making time for this.
No, thank you so much. My pleasure, Srishti. Really appreciate all the conversation, and look forward to catching up soon.